Rope digs painfully into my wrists and the fibers of the material itches against my skin, no doubt carving a rash that will take weeks to heal. Through my foggy vision, I can tell that it's the old-fashioned type of braided yarn rope. The only conceivable thought in my mind repeats endlessly. Was all of this really necessary? My head feels heavy when I turn to the side. With my arms restrained, I am firmly bound on the bed.
Is this really necessary?
I try to force my voice into a scream, but the sentence comes out like a whimper that my dried lips can't even finish speaking. The hospital wanted me to frequently check in, so they must be suspecting something if I don't show up for my scheduled appointments. Do hospitals do welfare checks in situations like this? I can't think straight, much less remember protocols of a system I am completely unfamiliar with. For a brief moment, I lose consciousness, and then my eyes open again. I can make out a blurry figure standing in the doorway, watching me with a sense of foreboding anticipation. In the background, I can hear music playing. The song blasting from the living room is the same one that played on the day I made the greatest mistake of my life.
Untie me. You know I can't even.
I plead with bated breath. I feel so weak, and there is no explanation for the fatigue weighing down on my body. Then the realization knocks the already sparse wind from my lungs, leaving me with just enough energy to speak the last whisper of a question before passing out.
What did you give me?
I wasn't intoxicated, but my colleague in the passenger seat was miles behind me in terms of sobriety. She was an otherwise quiet lady, though one wouldn't make that assumption of her at that very moment.
That was the best party ever. Thank you for driving me home, Lucas.
Bailey's words slurred, and she continuously looked from my direction to the side window, not in an anxious manner, but rather as though she was enthusiastically restless in her seat.
I don't think I'll ever go to another work party again.
Why's that? You just called it the best party ever. I half chuckled, and internally wished the trip was over already. I didn't know Bailey all that well. She had only started working at the company 3 months prior, and was probably still on probation. Her presence was slightly discomforting because she immediately took an apparent liking to me, and as a married man, I felt immeasurable shame for enjoying the attention. However, I never once reciprocated her advances and evaded the suggestive remarks with great effort, even though I couldn't deny feeling something mutual in every witty line and sly smirk she gave me.
Want to know a secret?
She suddenly asked, while twirling a strand of blonde hair with her index finger. I could feel her eyes on me, though I kept my vision sternly on the road. I did not want to know any of her secrets, but I nodded regardless.
My roommate is gone for the weekend, and my apartment gets really lonely, especially at night.
She didn't say more than that, and when I didn't respond, she leaned over far more than was necessary to turn on the radio. Her hand grazed my inner thigh. That's not appropriate. I gulped down the nerves that suddenly flooded my body. I never had a woman so boldly pursue me.
I thought so too when I noticed you staring at me all night. You weren't invested in any conversation you had because you were too focused on me. Honestly, Lucas, who's going to know?
I turned to look at her, eager to gauge her expression for any hints of a ruse, but she was evidently serious, and I was starting to actually consider her offer. Were these feelings worth acting upon? Bailey was right after all. I had been watching her that evening, yet it wasn't a deliberate action. She was a beautiful woman, and alluring in every way possible. Before I could fracture my marriage and vocalize my decision, we drove through an intersection and a car speeded across from the right, skipping the red light, colliding with my vehicle head-on. When I woke up in the hospital, I instantly realized that I couldn't move a muscle. The doctors told me that I sustained sufficient muscle damage from the accident, though reassured me that it would heal quickly. Other than that, I was pretty lucky to be walking away with only major bruising and a fractured ankle.
It was a traumatizing thing you experienced. In addition to the muscle injuries, the temporary paralysis you're feeling might last a while, but nothing indicates long-term debilitation.
One nurse told me while looking over a clipboard.
The doctor's going to discharge you in a couple of hours. You're on 2 weeks bed rest, and we want to see you again every second day.
She gave me a smile and scribbled down a note.
Oh, and I believe your wife is already here.
The nurse left the room, and Madeline rushed to my bedside. Her eyes were red and swollen while she sobbed uncontrollably.
Lucas, I was worried sick.
We hugged in a prolonged embrace.
Is Bailey all right?
I asked after Madeline brushed a kiss against my forehead. The question made her leer back, and I could have sworn her demeanor shifted. Madeline shook her head in confusion.
Who are you talking about? Bailey. She was in the car with me.
My head throbbed with pain. As I recalled the moment of the crash, the impact was directly on the passenger side. She certainly must have suffered the worst of it.
Honey, you were alone in the car. There was nobody else. Maybe I should call a doctor. I was just questioning them about possible head trauma.
Madeline ran outside before I could respond, and I must have drifted off from the meds because I woke up and she was at my side again, packing up scattered clothing.
We're going home, hon. The doctor has officially assigned me as your home nurse for the next few weeks.
She sounded cheerful as a nurse came to help load me into a wheelchair. It was such a strange feeling to lack any sensation in my body. I could lift my arms without much trouble, yet from below my torso, I couldn't twitch a limb. The only good thing was that my headache had subsided, and I felt more coherent as my wife wheeled me out of the hospital and we drove home. It's dark when I finally wake up, and relief washes over me when I can freely move my right arm. My left hand is still bound to the headboard of the bed, but I'll take every small victory that I'm granted. The sedative she gave me is still in my system. I'm nauseous, and my head feels dizzy as I search around the room. On the dresser at the foot of the bed, I can just make out a picture stuck against the mirror. It's of myself and my wife smiling happily on our wedding day. I should be grateful that the playlist of our wedding reception has been turned off, but the picture, so perfectly placed within my field of view, is another taunt toward my spirit. Tears stain my cheeks despite my best efforts to bite back any emotion. I try to move my right leg, and miraculously it shifts ever so slightly. Then I try my other leg, but quickly sees any movement when she appears in the doorway again.
What did you do to me?
I immediately ask. My throat feels dry, and my voice sounds terribly gruff.
What did you do to her?
She gives me no answer, just a stoic glance reflecting the coldest guise I have ever seen in a person. She offers a plate of food, completely ignoring the sobbing mess I had morphed into.
You need energy. Eat.
She nearly shoves the food into my face, though I can't bring myself to stop crying. I steal a vague glance at the plate, and my stomach turns.
Is that... What's wrong with you? Get a fucking grip of yourself, Lucas.
She snaps without warning, throwing the plate down on the bedside table before slapping me across the face. My brain sways around in my head as my vision is instantly filtered with large black dots. The slap wasn't unbearably harsh, though I'm already impaired and the effects of the assault lingers long after she leaves the room.
Are you sure I was alone in the car?
I inquired for the third time that day. It was 3 days into my recovery, and the only way I could get around was by wheelchair. Not that it bothered me. The doctors were right. With each passing moment, I could feel more senses returning, and my movement was improving, albeit little by little. The one thing that chipped away at my sanity was sitting idle at home. I had always been so busy, so target-driven at my job. I don't believe I ever took more than 2 days off work.
You were alone in the car,
Madeline assured me, and continued chopping onions. Her back was towards me, so I wheeled myself to her side.
I drove Bailey home that night. It's not a concussion. I have no memory loss. I know she was in the car with me.
I leaned forward to try and make eye contact with Madeline, hoping she would look at me and be able to tell from my solemn expression that I'm certain of this fact. She refused to meet my gaze and merely dumped the diced onions into a pot with a tired sigh. Then she reached over the sink and slammed down a dead pigeon on the chopping board. I scarcely had time to react before she decapitated it with a cleaver and casually began plucking feathers from its corpse.
What the fuck?
If I wasn't already paralyzed, the horrific scene would have rendered me such. Madeline looked at me with a dent in her brow, sincerely perplexed by my words.
What? What?
I echoed in disbelief.
Why are you slaughtering a bird?
I moved my wheelchair backwards, putting some distance between us.
I caught it in my traps,
Madeline innocently explained, and pointed the blunt edge of the cleaver towards the back. I grabbed the wheels of my chair and thrusted forward to look through the lower window near the back door. Sure enough, the yard was decorated with traps precisely hidden below trees and tucked into flower beds. It's impossible that I never noticed any of it. Was I really that absent at home?
Don't be silly, Lucas. You've had pigeon meat before. I just always make sure to have dinner ready before you come home,
Madeline proclaimed with a hint of pride. She had always been so petite and squeamish. Therefore, witnessing her butcher an animal was shocking to say the least. I never knew she had that side to her. I was about to say something when a loud thud came from out front. Madeline dropped what she was doing and quickly left the room.
Sit tight, hon. I'll go check what that was.
Bored and a little suspicious of my wife's not-so-hidden pastimes, I pulled out my phone and logged into the doorbell cam. The relief that flooded my veins was stronger than any morphine I had been given in the past few days, because Bailey was on my doorstep. She was alive, but looked very disheveled. Her clothes were tattered and bloody. It was odd that Bailey was seemingly moving down the porch, appearing to be sneaking away from the house. When Madeline came into view, Bailey pivoted around clearly off balance, and her face turned pale with horror. Our porch cam had no audio, so I couldn't make out what was said during the exchange. I could only watch Madeline grab Bailey by the arm, and even from the kitchen I could distinctly hear her snarl.
You got out?
She pulled Bailey into the house, and I could make out a quarrel transpiring in the entrance hallway.
Madeline? Bailey?
I yelled down the hall. My wheelchair got caught on the rug in the dining room, and I aggressively yanked at the wheels to no avail. I was bewildered, to say the least, and had no idea what to make of the situation. A few moments later, Madeline returned to the kitchen, acting abnormally quiet and reserved.
That was her,
I told my wife, not even hiding the panic in my throat. I held up the phone to show her the cam footage overlooking the front door.
What just happened? I saw everything.
Madeline ignored me and carried on preparing dinner.
What is with you, Madeline? Where is she? Why did you pull at her like that? Quite frankly, you're terrifying me right now.
I was getting frustrated at Madeline's instantaneous mood swings and the multiple personalities she apparently developed overnight.
Did you know that our dash cam has remote access?
She asked blankly, her voice carrying no emotion whatsoever.
Unlike the porch camera, the audio on the dash cam is very clear.
My mind went back to the night of the accident. If the dash cam had remote access, then Madeline was likely hinting at the fact that she knew that Bailey had come on to me. Even so, what I had witnessed Madeline do was completely unhinged. I considered calling the cops. Sensing my discomfort, Madeline spoke again.
You know what? You don't have to eat this. I'll prepare something else. It will be ready after your nap.
She moved in behind me, grabbed the phone from my hands, and forcefully wheeled me to the bedroom. I could only protest by cussing her out as she shut the door behind her after shoving the wheelchair into the room so violently it sent me tumbling from the chair headfirst to the hard ground. Hours have passed since Madeline struck me in the face. The darkening room is the only indication of time that I can perceive. An agonizing week has dragged by since I last heard Bailey screaming from the basement floor. Was she even still there? I look over at the plate Madeline left on the bedside table. I don't know if she is capable of that, though her erratic behavior has fluctuated to insane levels as of late, and she did make some terrifying threats. One thing is certain, I don't think I ever really knew my wife. As if summoned by the thought of her crossing my mind, Madeline casually strolled into the room in her nightgown and sat down on my bedside.
Time for your meds.
She brings a styrofoam cup to my lips, and I already know it contains a mixture of pills I absolutely do not need. In a desperate attempt, I turn my head away and quickly speak up.
Can't we talk? Please, darling.
There had to be a trace of my wife left in the stranger facing me now. She sighs with what could have been an ounce of remorse and lowers the cup, seemingly ready to finally hear me out.
Just tell me why you're doing this. You've completely set me back with your concoctions, and at this rate, will I ever even recover? I should have started walking a week ago. You know I could have.
I try to choose my words wisely, knowing just how unpredictable she is. She must be feeling some kind of guilt, because her eyes can't meet mine.
And Bailey, please tell me what you did to her. Can't you just let her go? I assure you, nothing of what you suspect was actually happening.
I keep the tone of my voice low, not wanting to anger her. I am terrified by the memory of Madeline dragging Bailey by her hair down the stairs into the basement after she escaped a second time. Her deeply suppressed rage was so prominent, I can't imagine how I could have missed this dark side to her.
Just let her go.
I try again with dwindling hope. Madeline warned me that she would skin my mistress and then feed her to me since I so craved her. It feels like I'm stuck in a nightmare or on the set of a very disturbing horror movie.
How was she supposed to leave without her legs?
Madeline gently asks me. A look of false distress flashes across her features. If I wasn't convinced of how deranged she truly was, then this moment and the look on her face confirms it all.
And you didn't even bother tasting them.
She nods her head toward the plate of food and brings the cup back to my mouth.
Now, take your medicine, Lucas. Then what?
I'm trembling while biting back tears and delaying the inevitable as long as I possibly can.
Are you going to massacre me too?
Madeline tilts her head, frowning softly.
Perhaps. That's one possible way this could end.
With that, she forces my lips to part and dumps the entire cup of pills into my mouth. I fight back as much as I can, but even with one arm freed, I'm still too weak to put up much resistance. She quickly brings her palm up to seal my mouth shut and hums like a lunatic while I wriggle about on the bed.
You can swallow to make it easy, but they will dissolve with your saliva either way.
Without the strength to battle her, I relent and gulp down the pills.
You are an amazing husband, Lucas.
Madeline smiles at me and stands up from the bed. Only after she moves further away do I catch a glimpse of the letter in her hand.
It's a shame that things ended this way, but you did it. It's all confessed here. Your expressed guilt for having the affair, your admittance to the murder of your mistress, and your endowment acceded to your beloved widow in an attempt to mend some of the spiritual wounds you leave behind.
She holds out the letter forged in my handwriting. My vision is deteriorating fast, and I can't even read a single word of my own death note. My mind is heavy, and I feel sleep beckoning to me more persistently than ever before. Thanks for listening. If you enjoy these stories, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and check out some more of my episodes here.